There we go.
Yeah. Hi, sir, how are you?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Alive.
That's a fair answer. So, was I not audible earlier?
No, no, you won't.
Okay. So, I was giving a very quick introduction about you. So, I think since you are here, I think you yourself can do that better as of now. I will probably contribute to it as in when you sort of finish your introduction.
Okay, what do you need in terms of an introduction? That I'm a failed entrepreneur, I'm a failed hotelier, I'm a failed this one, and a failed author? Nah,
That's
kid.
actually that's a very, in all positive ways, it's a very motivating introduction. So, I think you can go ahead with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, every time you hit a roadblock, you create a story, and
Right.
comes in handy some part of the life. It's a
Mm.
different thing that people look at me as a person who has been through uh, different fields in my life. I have started off as a accountant, so I'm no writer. Uh, I have done work on project sites. I've run hotels. I've run restaurants, and even worked in the media. So yeah, that's a lot of experience packed in there.
Yeah, man of
And
many
with
hats.
it, yeah, I mean, oh, well, yeah, I am. I can say that without modesty.
Yeah, please go on, sir. Yeah.
So, I mean, writing was something which I was very bad at some stage, and that's an honest fact. And whenever I'm told I'm bad at something, I make it a point in my life to make sure that I get better and better and better. So, I used to write blogs. I used to write good memos to people. People receiving them didn't like them because
Yeah.
at work, good memos often means very wicked instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And someone in my HR told me that I should write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought she was joking because she was being sarcastic. And she said, no, I really mean it. But that was in year 2000, somewhere back there. And then it's only in 2015, 16 once I met you and we started talking about some other
Yeah.
plans that you introduced me to that little uh, game of yours to write a story for
Yeah.
Unmasked. That was my
Yeah.
first story. I read it.
Correct.
I said, how could I write that drivel?
That's
How
kind of a
could I do
universal truth
that?
with everybody.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the time I realized that uh, I need to do something about it. Just writing blogs and just writing good business communication doesn't make you necessarily a good writer. You got to do something about it.
Right.
And then came along this competition from Times of India,
Mm-hmm.
where it said 11 months, 11 authors.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I saw that list of authors that they had put up, I was very excited because Amish Tripathi was one of my favorite, still remains my favorite author.
Mm-hmm.
And the chance to be mentored by someone like that would have been, you know, fantastic. So I started writing stories one a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I came to you somewhere halfway in between. And I said, can
Right.
we make a book out of it?
Yeah.
And you just said that, yeah, and you know, what the trouble we went through with them, not allowing us
With
to
the
write that for 2 years.
terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually, so the 11 Gurus, which came out second, is my first book.
Yeah.
And Coffee Shots, which is the second, became
Right.
the first. And again, you know how we managed to put up Coffee Shots in about good 4 months or 5 months.
4 to 5 months.
When
Yeah. Yeah.
we were
Absolutely.
told that
Yeah.
the 11 stories cannot go into print right now. And
Yeah.
I said, now that I've got into it, I'm going to get my book published. And I wrote out
Mm.
11 more stories
Yeah.
and put that together as the Coffee Shot. So That's the long and the short of it. After 11 Gurus, I haven't written much. I've gone back to business writing. I have gone back to a lot of blogging. So I
Mhm.
have not left the pen, but I'm
Mhm.
not exactly using it to write fiction. And if at all I'm going to go back to writing a book, it would be something in the nonfiction
Right.
uh, genre. So
I think
that's
as an individual also, it a lot of it depends on what kind of ideas are coming to you, what kind of inspiration is coming to you. If it's a shift from fiction to non-fiction and you see it as valid, then it is valid, right? So it does not uh, writing a fiction or a particular category does not necessarily define you or define your writing style, right? So if you are seeing that shift and it's happening to you naturally, so that is absolutely fine. So yeah, I think that was a good detailed introduction of yourself. Uh, in fact, from today we have started the sales of books again
all right.
through Amazon. Yeah, yeah. So from today we have started, and I think after this Instagram live, we'll be doing a promotional sale for both the books. We'll be giving away a 1+1 combo for Coffee Hot and the 11 Guru. So that's the plan after the live
Yeah.
session, and of course to give a sort of a boost after the lockdown, right? People are sort of trying to pick up the new books again.
Yeah, yeah, they're bored
Um,
of webinars. Webinars
Sorry.
are boring.
Yeah,
Webinars are boring
absolutely.
now. So give them something to read.
Webinars are happening like every hour of every day, so I'm sure they want to read
Yeah.
something
And
fresh, something new.
they're really not adding too much of value
Yeah.
to
There's nothing,
anyone's.
yeah, I mean, there is nothing new that is coming out really. It's all the
And
same that is happening
the best
before.
part is, all that they're speaking about is the unknown. Nobody
Yeah.
knows what's going on. Nobody knows if there's a solution. Nobody knows if that thing is going to work out or it's not
Yeah.
going to work out, how long it's going to last. So it's
Yeah.
all fiction in the making. A lot of people who are out there and want to pick up story ideas, I think all they need to do is just you know, be very careful in terms of surfing the net right now for stories.
Mhm.
And from the news bits, you can pick out so many. I mean, there's a
Right.
problem going on with the migrants. So there's a story
Mhm.
on the migrants that somebody can think about. Very intense, but somebody has to do a lot of research. You can't do it sitting back at home and uh, doing what they call textbook kind
Mhm.
of work. You need to
Right.
be there. There's so much
Mhm.
going on in terms of people we really never took much or paid much heed to, especially the
Mhm.
police people, the people in the healthcare
Yeah.
industry. I mean,
Mhm.
somebody who has got that uh, ability to patiently go and talk to people, they'll find out uh, a story a minute that is happening,
Right.
evolving
So
right in front of them.
yeah. That's a very good input. I think anybody who's watching, you must really note this down that right now is the time for you to find a lot of ideas for story writing,
Yeah.
because everybody's sitting at home and then there are different kind of people coming out and there are different kind of problems. So I'm sure you can find a lot of stories. So, sir, tell me, how has your lockdown been in terms of an individual, not an individual different from being a writer and as a writer in both ways?
Okay, as a writer, what I did was I attended, obviously, the first thing that happened immediately after lockdown was we were all in a state of shock that what's
Mhm.
going to happen. And, at that time, 21 days seemed a lot.
A lot,
And
right?
everybody went on to webinars and trying to figure out how we're going to work in the future, what's going to change. One thing for sure, everyone I know speaks of is that the world that we will go back to is not going to be the same again for quite some
Of
time to
course.
come.
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
It's a situation where we have stopped trusting people.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, there's a lot of humanity which is shining, okay?
Mm.
In terms of how people have gotten up from their zone of comfort and done so
Mm.
much without even budging from their home. Collection of money for charity, collection of food, collection of stuff for those who need it. But on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, I walk on the road and you can see it automatically. People giving way. Nobody wants to get too close to you, and that's what I do. I do cheat and go out and walk
Yeah.
and exercise.
Yeah.
I've used this time to do a lot of introspection. I've used this time to think things through of what I should be doing after this is over, when it is over, and if it's not over, how do I get back into uh, at least some kind of productive uh, method of putting things together. It's not there yet, but I'm sure it will come about. And one of the ideas is, as I discussed with you, is to write a book, a non-fiction book right now. I have the content, and it's just laziness which is keeping me from, penning it.
Right.
And the second thing that's keeping me from putting the book together is the fact that there's so much more to do now. One would
Mm-hmm.
think that all you do is just laze, but there's more connection with the family, there's more connection with household duties. I become
That's
an expert on e-shopping right now, and something which I'd never done. And I used to
yeah.
keep berating my father and my son for constantly ordering from Amazon, and now I'm doing the same thing. I mean, every morning I used to get up and try and figure out, Big Basket has got this, let's try and get a
Yeah.
slot. So it became like
Yeah.
playing a game, trying to just get a
Yeah.
slot from one of these
Right.
vendors to get
Mm.
deliveries to your house, getting disappointed at the stuff not reaching your place.
Mm.
So that's the experience. But it's not that I have enjoyed it, but it's also not that I'm fed up and feel that it's the, mentally uh, there is a problem in being locked down for another 10 or 15
Mm.
days or 20 days because, uh, again, there are two schools of thought about should the lockdown have been imposed or not.
Mm.
And for some, it's that we should have followed the Swedish model of not having gone into a lockdown at all. And
Mm.
the others which say that this has helped save a lot many lives. One
Mm.
cannot say what is right and what is wrong,
Right.
but eventually, I think starting from today, there is a
Mm.
tapering of the restrictions that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Of course.
fear is that the second wave will probably hit us sooner rather than later. And
It's not
that's
like
the
the
time.
number of, it's not like the number of cases are going down or anything, but then, I mean, government has to run nonetheless, right? So probably
I
that's
think
the
everyone,
idea
it's not
behind.
the government, it's the world that has to run. And the
Yeah, of
world
course.
cannot run being locked in their homes.
Right.
So I think quite a few countries have realized it and they have started opening up borders, they've started opening up commerce, they've started opening up schools, in some countries at least.
Mm.
Uh, a lot of it is online. And we've learned so much about our abilities to uh, do things which we thought were impossible. I mean,
Right.
there's a good realization that we can be very productive from our very houses
Of course.
and
Yeah.
don't need to waste 3 to 4 hours of our life just
Mm.
commuting and
Mm.
getting tension on the
Right.
road like we used to, at least in Mumbai. I don't know about Delhi, but
No, I
travel
mean,
in
I
Mumbai
think it's
was
true for all
terrible.
the metro cities here. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true for every such place. So, yeah.
So I'm also a little pleased. I mean, I'm not happy about people moving out of the city.
Mm.
I think the word migrant is very negative. I don't like that word. But
Mm.
a lot many people came to big cities looking for big opportunities, and they
Yeah.
have suddenly realized that this is not the land of their
No,
dreams and have decided to
it's
go
true.
back home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in some ways, I think it's good that they have,
Of course.
because uh, this life is not life. I mean, there's money for many of them, which is possibly more, but the grief that they get in our cities is not something which one should bear. They're much better off back home.
Probably, yeah. So, I think we've all been impacted so much that it's sort of become easy for us to get carried away into the topic. So, before we do that much, I'll come back to the objective of this discussion. So, a lot of people, a lot of aspiring writers, they want to understand the idea behind short stories. They're not sure how a short story must be carved. People are reading short stories, but they don't have the basic ideology of it. So before I get into the aspect of how you make it work for you, I want to know the numbers. How many short stories have you written? How many have been published? How many are waiting to be completed? Do you have that kind of a figure with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think half the stories I've written have been published.
Okay.
50% are still in some level of work in progress, and many may
Mm-hmm.
not see light of day because they become irrelevant. A
Yeah,
lot of short stories, uh, the idea comes from a specific topic which is valid at a particular
that
period
point in
in
time.
time.
Right.
So now, if I was to write about a specific topic
Mm.
within a year or so, this will be all fiction, even if it was
Mm.
real, because that situation
Mhm.
doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Short stories are easy for me. I don't know. I've been told that the hardest form of writing is to write a short
Right.
story, but
Mm-hmm.
they really come very easily to me. Uh,
Right.
you have to open and close something, anything between 2,000 and 10,000 words. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you may want to call it. Some
Yeah.
call it a novella, some call it, I don't know, on
Long
Amazon.
short stories.
There is a long short stories.
Long short
So
stories.
forget
Yeah.
the terminology. It's
Mm.
just you don't want to stretch it too long, and you don't want to say it in such a way that the reader suddenly says that, hey, I mean, I didn't get the point. And a lot of that criticism did come through when people read my books, and they did tell me that the second book, which was actually the first, was not such a great one. Uh, in one way, it made me sad, but on the other hand, I was happy because the stories which I wrote later actually came
Yeah.
out much better than what I had written in the first
Right.
place.
Mhm. I mean, of course, I know I've worked with you over time, and I know I've asked you to cut short stories, and there hasn't been a single conversation where you said, "See, Sanchit, I cannot cut it any more shorter, or I cannot elongate this story." So that process, I think, it has come to you much easily than the most of the other people. So I would say it's a very positive factor for you. But then, other than this aspect of the length of the short story, because obviously the length defines the story being short. Other than that, is there some sort of secret that you around which you build your aura of writing that short story? Is there a certain specific style or format that you keep in mind when you're working through a short story?
If you follow cricketing greats or chefs or any person who has been successful in a specific field,
Hmm.
and if you ask them what's their secret recipe or secret sauce, it is to be natural. You cannot impose something upon yourself that is not true to you.
Right.
So if short stories are what you're comfortable with, write
Hmm.
short stories. I am now getting into a situation where I love writing flash.
Okay.
In fact, that's something which I'm pushing myself into, to write something with less than 1,000 words.
Hmm.
To make because you can
Yeah.
actually focus all the intensity of
Hmm.
one situation, start it and complete it. It can be as emotional as reading a whole book. I mean, uh, Hemingway was an expert at writing flash. I mean, a lot of people didn't understand what was uh,
There in the
said,
story.
and the interpret not did not understand, but the interpretation of the stories from person to person differed.
It differs.
It's never clear cut.
Hmm.
And of course, if you think you want your book to be made into a film and TV series or something, I would advise you against picking up short stories as a
Oh, yeah.
strong point.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Though, you know, our friend Siddharth Jain, I
Mhm.
spoke to him once and he told me, you know, it all starts on a piece of paper, just like a
Yeah.
napkin. It's an idea,
Yeah.
and you can make it as long as you
Yeah.
want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is no reason why a short story cannot become a film, but it's
Yeah.
very hard uh, writing it out. If you haven't thought through the natural process of how I'm going to make 10,000 into 100,000 words.
Right. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Right. Okay. So ideally, in the current scenario, you are actually challenging yourself from short stories to flash fiction, bringing down from 10,000 to 1,000 words. So that's almost 90% cut. So I think that's a big challenge in itself. People find it hard to
Certainly,
write
yes.
something in a short story format. So I think, I mean, I must definitely congratulate you for that, because your short stories are extremely exciting and they're very interesting once the reader gets the hang of it. And having gone through the process 2 times with you, I see that that came naturally to you. And if you're working towards the fiction aspect of short story writing, then I'm sure you're kind of trying to develop that natural instinct for writing flash fiction. Is that something? Is that something? A sort of a Is that kind of a commitment that you're trying to make, or is it something? Is it like a skill that you're building for yourself?
I think it's a skill. It's a skill that what you can say in 10,000 words, can you say it in 1,000? That means if you get a
Right.
book, you can say a lot
Hmm.
more and not get people bored. You can
Okay.
shift from story to story without having to,
Hmm.
drag. I mean, if you can't say it crisply, concisely, entertainingly in say 1,000 words to 1,500 words max, then you are not
Hmm.
doing a good job of it.
Got it.
It's so I like to say as much as I can in those 200, 300 pages as possible. And
Got it.
the kind of nonfiction work which I'm doing has got a lot to do with. I read one book in which there were some 49 odd chapters,
Hmm.
each one of them about 800 to 1,000 words. And it read
Okay.
like a story, and it was nonfiction.
Okay.
And that's what inspired me actually, that this is the kind of format that I should be working on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very. It's actually a very popular and engaging format for non-fiction. This is something that has been sort of building the trend with the kind of writers who convert themselves into writing from a certain field, like a coaching or or like a podcast person. They convert to writing. So that's the kind of format they like to pick up. So I think it's a very interesting genre. I will say that it's not yet very popular among Indian writers, but if you can really work on it, I think it's a very good way to go ahead in the non-fiction genre.
Yeah.
Um, what also I'd like to ask you is that, okay, as a publisher, I'm sort of limited when I talk to aspiring writers as to where the creative process comes from. Right now, obviously, from this conversation and obviously from before also, I know that you pick up ideas and inspiration from stories that are happening around you or what you
Right.
see probably. But there's a writer's block for everybody, right? But there are writers who are not able to carve that theme for their story, and they're waiting for inspiration or waiting to build that theme even if they have the idea. So what kind of advice or what kind of suggestions would you give to such people about finding inspiration or building up on an idea that they have in a very, very minuscule level? So what should they do?
There's no such thing as a writer's block.
Okay.
Okay. There's no such
That's,
thing as
yeah,
a writer's block.
yeah, full stop,
Let
yeah.
me put that out first and make it very clear.
Yeah.
That is limitation of your own mind.
Okay.
Your mind is bored, but it's not blocked.
Okay.
So, like in class, you used to doodle if there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Uh, one should do a writing form of doodling, which
Okay.
is write anything, maybe even a
Mm-hmm.
paragraph in a day, maybe even uh, a sentence which inspires them,
Mm-hmm.
and live with it for that moment. The inspiration to expand that thought, to explain that thought,
Mm-hmm.
to uh, project that thought will come naturally. Okay,
Okay.
something it's how you say a fire starts with a spark.
The spark. Right.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's what you need to keep burning always in your mind.
Okay.
There's never a block. Never, never, never a block. And
Okay.
ideas, there are so many. It may not interest you to write on
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
the and I've seen a lot of writers blocking themselves from the idea because they say that this has already been done. But has it been done by you? Have you said it in your way? Have you said it with your nuances?
Right.
There are, I mean, if you read classical texts on writing, there are about 8 or 10 different themes. That's it.
Okay.
There are 8 or 10 different ideas. And the
Mm-hmm.
simplest one is boy meets girl, girl meets boy. There is
Mm-hmm.
a situation, and in the end,
Yeah.
either they have a happy ending or they don't have a happy ending.
Madhu,
And that's it.
Madhu just sent a comment saying perfect. So I think when we were doing a live with him, he said exactly the same thing, but obviously his was a different style of saying. But what he said about there not being a writer's block and then how to expand your thought, I think that's how perfect. That's what he means when he says perfect. So I think thank you very much for that, and please continue, sir. You were saying,
Now, I mean, look at the way he works.
yeah,
I've always seen him come up with some very, very, how would you say, intense ideas, whether it's on his
yeah,
Instagram posts, whether it is the copy which goes along with it.
yeah,
No.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, each one knows how to express themselves
correct.
in some form or the other. And
Hmm.
uh, so, creativity is not something which you can switch on and switch off. It's there.
Hmm.
It's just that it is slow or it is fast.
Fast. Correct.
Okay.
Got it.
Uh,
Got it.
that's what you. That's what you need to remember, and it's that simple.
I mean, I think you said it so aptly. And if writers are sort of able to stoke that in, and it's such a simple thought if you really look at it, there is there is no yes or there is no. It's all there. You
Yeah,
just have to realize what it is. That's how
that's true.
simple it is.
Yeah.
I think I am
The simplest
inspired
thing are
in so many ways.
really the simplest things are the hardest to implement. That's the
Exactly.
funny part. It's always the
Exactly.
simple things
Yeah.
that we get, fomoxed about. That how are we going to do it? Because it's so
Yeah.
simple.
Exactly. So, you remember when we were working through the title of Coffee Shots? I mean, obviously we had the title since the beginning. We were working through the subtitle, and we
Right.
were on a call, and we were discussing what the subtitle should be, and then we said it should be a story in every cup, and you were like, "Oh shit, it's been always there, right in front of us, and we could not really see it,
We
and it
couldn't
was so
see it.
perfect."
Yeah.
So obviously from the beginning I know, what coffee means to you, and I know that you are a home chef. I've I've eaten something brilliant that you cooked. It was delicious. That is obviously a different topic for another day. But uh, what kind of strong impact does coffee have on you as in terms of writing? Obviously, it inspired you to create a whole book. That is one part of it. But now that you're done with it, is there anything extra that it is adding? What kind of fuel is coffee? I just want to lay emphasis on it because you know uh, I've seen that you find a lot of connectivity with coffee, and you were able to produce a whole book out of it. So what the message I'm trying to get across to people here is that you can always find a single object sort of to hang
Right.
on to find inspiration from. So that's what I'm trying to get to from this question.
Okay. So, when we were young, I was young at least, not we, I was young. When I used to go and do my exams, I used to be scared of how I'm going to do uh, my exam. And I used to go to uh, a holy person, and she used to give me a you know, one grass.
Okay,
Okay.
one
Just
leaf of that grass.
one.
Okay.
And said, I have prayed on it, keep it in the book, and you shall do extremely well.
Hmm.
So all you need is what is called that crutch.
Okay.
Okay, so you have a favorite pen, you have a necklace with a favorite,
Yeah.
that without this I won't do
Yeah.
it.
Pendant or something. Yeah.
I guess for writing the book, coffee was something similar to that for me. Uh, I just held on to the cup as a crutch, kind of it. That, you give yourself that belief that by drinking coffee, your mind will be invigorated and the flow will be much better. But honestly, I'm a storyteller. So
Right.
I can give you another story about it. But uh, I enjoy coffee. And that was the only reason I used it as uh, an element, if you may want to call it, to
Right.
unite how the book. These are coffee tales. So short
Yeah.
stories are generally associated as coffee tales,
Hmm.
and that was the idea that was probably subconsciously going on in my mind, that it should be something that people should read within their coffee break, not at one stretch, but take a story a day
Right.
and read it while they are having their coffee. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go from end to, from start to end. And it should be something which they enjoy reading. Like in the morning, you would like to read a newspaper. In the evening, you would pick up your favorite short story book and read a story, and you're done with it. But I don't think there's a connection anymore. I've switched to teas. Now I drink that obnoxious liquid called Nespresso,
Uh,
and I'm done with it.
all right. So I mean, you've taken that step, gone to the top, and then now you're back to taking a new step. So that's probably the
Yeah, now I have
reason
a
that you
now I
don't
have
need
a
it anymore.
different love in my life. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Basically,
yes,
your coffee was the love at that time and inspired you to sort of create the book.
yeah.
I think that's wonderful. So there are a lot of things that in this conversation that you've said that were extremely simple to sort of get across to. It's like, it's like a religious scripture which is so deep and yet so simple. So if writers are able to sort of grasp that, I think there's a lot of inspiration.
You
I
should
mean,
hear Kabir.
there's so many fresh tales to get to come out,
I think I
irrespective of
think
how it comes out.
I think writers should hear Kabir.
Kabir.
Uh, um, Simplest things are so profound,
Yeah.
so deep. Uh, you can get all your answers in there.
Right. 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 All right. So I think this is great. Before I sort of conclude the conversation, is there any sort of inspiration or idea that you would like to throw around for for viewers or audiences of this call today, tomorrow, day after, whenever they want to see it, or sort of give them any suggestion, advice, feedback, whatever it might be? Because a lot of people I know there are writers who in the morning get up thinking that today I'm going to finish my story. But by the end of the day, they're not able to. They're not able to live up to their goal, their own goal. So is there something that you can do to help them achieve that goal during that day?
Okay, so this is something I learned from when I was in my days with my with the press, and I used to write. I became what they call is the reluctant editor,
Okay.
because my editor left and I had to fill in the shoes of writing the op-ed column, and I didn't know how to. Uh, so my junior editor of another magazine, uh,
Mhm.
I asked him that, I'm not from this area. Can you please help me out? And he gave me one Guru Mantra. He said, write down everything that comes into your mind. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. Do not
Mhm.
worry about the logic too much at this stage.
Mhm.
If you feel this is right, just put it down. After you read
Mhm.
it, you can edit. It's very hard to add something after you have finished something. It's very
Right.
easy to chip and chop away on things which are unnecessary. So,
Right.
the reason why people do not finish their books is, or a chapter, is because they constantly try to reread at the same time. And, allow your story to drift. If it is drifting, there is a
Mhm.
natural reason for them to drift. The river doesn't go on the same path. It keeps
Mhm.
meandering and changing its path every now and then. The end goal is
Mhm.
maybe the ocean,
Yeah.
but the path is never the same. So,
Right.
why should your story be set because a template has said that now we are going to do this, now we are going to do this, now we are going to do that? That's your intention. That was how you started off. That gave you that
Right.
first belief of climbing the mountain. Now
Mhm.
climb it. In the middle of the climb, if you figure out that what I had planned is not working out, doesn't mean you're going to get stuck in the middle of the mountain. Find
Right.
another way.
Yeah. Got it.
And, oh, write short stories. Much easier.
Much easier. I think that's wonderful, sir. Again, a very simple thing to understand, but can become kind of hard if you're not able to understand and sort of implement. Uh, all right, sir. I think that'll be all for now, and
Oh,
I will sort of keep you posted with how we are going with the coffee shots and the 11 gurus, what we are up to next, because obviously things are going to be slow for now, but we will try to sort of give it a boost as much as we can. Thank you so much for giving me time and coming on for this Instagram live session. I know this was the kind of first for you, is
yeah,
it?
that was,
After
yeah.
so lockdown has given you this new thing as well, right?
Yeah,
Exploring
sure.
Instagram live.
Right. I
or
thank
I
everyone who,
or did I
who
force
joined
you?
us. No, and I thank everyone who joined in.
Yes,
James,
absolutely. Yeah.
Sanya, Katya, my wife, my son, my daughter,
Yeah.
all of them joined in.
I did
And
quite a few groups. Yeah.
Parul, I don't know if they're still around, but whoever
Yeah.
joined in, thank you very much for taking time and
All
joining
right.
this session.
Great. Great.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Please take care. Stay safe. Bye. Cheers.
Same to you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you guys for joining the Instagram live. Thank you so much for your comments as well. Thank you, Mathu, for being there all along. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye. Take care. Stay safe. Keep writing and keep reading.